Today is September 13th, 2018. This is Roland Martin Unfiltered. We are broadcasting live from Cuba Libre here in the nation's capital. This, of course, is Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, ALC 2018. What is happening here is our School Choice is the Black Choice reception that we're holding here. So we've been honoring many folks who are leaders in the area of school choice. Over the next hour, we're going to have a fantastic show. A number of guests on today's show, including Congressman Emanuel Cleaver, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries. We'll talk to urban prep leader Tim King out of Chicago. We'll talk to Cheryl Graves, who from Nielsen, talk about their new report on the black consumers and how we're going from consumers to creators. Also, Erica Alexander from Living Single will be with us as well. Plus, we'll talk about our Stuck on Stupid Person of the Week. Yeah, it's Donald Trump for what he said about Puerto Rico and the lies he is telling. Folks, it is a jam-packed show, and we'll hear from all three brothers and sisters running for governor. That is Stacey Abrams of Georgia, Andrew Gillum of Florida, Ben Jealous of Maryland. And don't forget, elections today is in New York. Jamon Williams is running for lieutenant governor there as well. Folks, it is a packed show. It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Let's go. Folks, we're live here in Washington, D.C. on Roland Martin Unfiltered for CBCF 2018. Glad to have all of you here. Don't forget to also share this feed with all of your followers. We want as many folks as possible watching today's show. It's all about politics here at CBC. Many of the folks who are running for office, or folks who are already in office, are here. Not just talking about those who are running, but also dealing with the issues of public policy. Where we are right now is Cuba Libre for our School Choice is the Black Choice reception. Of course, that's an initiative that I founded with my wife, Reverend Dr. Jackie Hood Martin. We're going to talk about school choice a little bit later in the show, but first, I do want to talk to a couple of folks who are our honorees here. They're members of Congress, the elder amongst us, Congressman Emanuel Cleaver from Kansas City. He joins us, my alpha brother, and also we have, of course, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries from New York. Gentlemen, glad to have you on Roland Martin Unfiltered. First and foremost, we are obviously in strange times. Every single day something happens, and then we go, oh, my goodness, there's a new low that's coming out of this White House. As two individuals who are having to deal with a lack of leadership, Paul Ryan, as a perfect example, he pretty much dismissed what Trump had to say today about 3,000 dying in Puerto Rico. How difficult is it when people talk about bipartisanship and then you have one side who won't even check their leader?
Well, what these guys are doing is perverting the cerebral work that the founders put into the Constitution. We have no checks and balances, and the people who are watching Roland Martin tonight ought to understand that there is no checks and balance with the executive branch and the legislative branch. And if it doesn't happen pretty soon, I am not exaggerating. I think that the democratic future of this nation may be actually in question. And Paul Ryan, I was excited when he took the job. He's now going the same way as Boehner. They ran Boehner out. They've intimidated Ryan. And now you couldn't get him to say anything with strength and power behind him. And I was disappointed in his little weak response to Donald Trump hurting the family members of people who died.
Congressman Jeffries, we just had, of course, we're now seeing, because some documents were unearthed, more than 1 million bottles of water that just left on a runway in Puerto Rico. In any other administration, you would have hearings. You would have people demanding answers from FEMA. Pretty much it's kind of like, okay, no big deal.
Well, that's exactly right. As Reverend Cleaver said, the House Republican Conference has been missing in action. They've been absent without official leave. They have failed to do their constitutional duties. The House of Representatives is a separate and co-equal branch of government. We don't work for Donald Trump. We work for the American people. But clearly, Paul Ryan and the rest of the cover-up caucus on the other side of the aisle has no interest in doing anything other than cover for the recklessness, for the insensitivity, for the intolerance, for the indecency of Donald Trump, their boss. If he says jump, their response is how high, even if it's jumping off a cliff, which hopefully will mean we're going to take the majority back in November.
You've got a Supreme Court nominee right now. They won't reveal his opinions on stuff. You look at Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, who was put in office by those Native Alaskans who voted, and he's had writings that go against them. It's all kind of different things, and it's as if the rules are out the window, process is out the window, and it's we're going to get our people on no matter what, damn any norms whatsoever.
Well, we're living in the shame season. There is no shame, because I don't know how people can sleep at night with a Supreme Court nominee who probably made it clear that he was going to be partial to the president if an issue arose, which it very well likely will, whether the president should respond to a subpoena. Secondly, let me just say this very quickly. I think that the Republicans have dipped to a new low when they allow this man in the White House to say and do anything without any possibility of paying for it. So he's getting away with everything, so he's going to continue to do it because there is no consequence. There's no reason for him to say, I'm not going to do it. 3,000 people dead, and he says they didn't die.
Now, Congressman, there are some things that still are happening. For instance, you and I have talked about this here, the whole issue of criminal justice reform. You've been trying to work with Jared Kushner, work with this White House. Trump announced he wasn't going to endorse anything before the election because Republicans, as if they didn't want their people to lose, which is crazy considering you have Republicans and conservatives, broke white folks who are being caught up in a criminal justice system in Tennessee, in Alabama, and Mississippi. And it literally is the absence of leadership and, to me, the absence of common sense.
Well, that's absolutely right. And in the criminal justice space, we were able to move bipartisan prison reform legislation out of the House of Representatives, and we were hopeful because the mass incarceration epidemic in America, we now incarcerate, as you know, Roland, more people than any other nation in the world. When the drug war first started, 1971, less than 350,000 people incarcerated in America. Today, more than 2.2 million. The majority black and Latino, but also rural poor whites caught up in that dragnet as well. So mass incarceration is not a Democratic issue or Republican issue, it's an American issue. But again, Donald Trump, uninformed, ignorant on a whole host of complicated issues, listened basically to Jeff Sessions and Tom Cotton, who are right-wing, reactionary, law and order Republicans.
Tom Cotton says we need more people in jail.
Absolutely.
Who the hell
control.
says that?
Yeah.
Who says it?
But that's the insanity that we're living in right now.
We are less than 60 days. It's the final question to both of you. We're less than 60 days out from the election. We are seeing folks who are energized. We're seeing black folks raising money themselves, creating political action committees. There's somebody who's watching this right now who's living in Florida, Alabama, Mississippi. They're living in Texas. You might potentially have, if Republicans split the vote, you could have a black United States senator from Mississippi. You could have a black governor in Florida. You could have a black governor in Georgia, in Maryland. You could have a black lieutenant governor in New York, depending upon what happens tonight with Jamon Williams. What do you say to the person who's watching who says, look, I don't think my vote matters. I don't think any politicians are worth a damn. Why should I spend my time and go vote? Congressman.
Well, first of all votes matter, and all you have to do is look at what happened in Virginia. Democrats, for example, lost the legislature by one vote.
A coin flip
on that one vote. And so I think every vote counts. But the other deal that I think is important is if you want to continue to have a sick, silent Senate, stay home. And let Kavanaugh and all these individuals who have no business in positions of judicial leadership take over this country and rule against many of the things that we all need and believe in. So this is the time to vote. African Americans and Latinos can alter the future of the United States and the world if they get out and vote.
Congressman Jeffries.
Yeah, there are about 330 million people in this country. But Donald Trump is president right now because of approximately 30,000 votes in 3 states. And as a result, we've been dealing with this long national nightmare. And so you individuals out there have an ability, consistent with what our ancestors did, who fought and died for the right to vote, to go out there and make a difference, to hand Democrats the keys so that we can have a check and balance on an out-of-control executive consistent with the Constitution of the United States of America.
Congressman Emmanuel Cleaver, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Hey, congratulations on the show.
All right, thank you. So, folks, we were talking a little bit earlier about Donald Trump today, comments that he made with regards to Puerto Rico. And this is a president who lies. And when I say lies, 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 that's why we have Trump Lies Matter. And so I want to read for you. What this president tweeted this morning. Not only is it insensitive, not only is it shameful, it also degrades the people of Puerto Rico. Of course, we know 3,000 people, based upon an estimate a study done by folks at George Washington University, died as a result of the hurricane in Puerto Rico. 9 hours ago, this is what Donald Trump tweeted. 3,000 people did not die in the 2 hurricanes that hit Puerto Rico. When I left the island after the storm had hit, they had anywhere from 6 to 18 deaths. As time went by, it did not go up by much. Then a long time later, they started to report really large numbers like 3,000. This was done by the Democrats in order to make me look as bad as possible when I was successfully raising billions of dollars to help rebuild Puerto Rico. If a person died for any reason, like old age, just add them onto the list. Bad politics. I love Puerto Rico. You know Republicans are scared to death when you have folks like Florida Governor Rick Scott, who is running for United States Senate. He came out with a statement flat out saying, not true. Ron DeSantis, who is running to replace him as governor against Andrew Gillum, he even said that simply is not the case. Why? A significant number of Puerto Ricans have moved to Florida. They are eligible to vote, and so he knows full well that that's the worst thing in the world to tick off Puerto Ricans, folks who've actually died, who've lost family members. Folks, it is amazing. In fact, today, the Washington Post has a story. Donald Trump has told nearly 5,000 lies since he became president of the United States. How in the hell can anybody trust anything this man says when he will lie? He is angry and upset about what he did not do in Puerto Rico, when he went there tossing paper towels around, when he went there complaining to Puerto Rico about how they were wrecking the federal budget by virtue of the hurricane. Omarosa was on our show, and she said the reason he would not help Puerto Rico is because he was in a spat with the mayor of San Juan. Folks, this is the kind of person who is sitting in the Oval Office who has no business representing this country. Every time Donald Trump lies, we're going to bust him with Trump Lies Matter, and we're not going to stop until he learns to tell the truth. Now, earlier today at Congressional Black Caucus, there was a panel that took place. It featured the 3 African Americans who are running for governor. That is Stacey Abrams in Georgia, that is Andrew Gillum in Florida, and Ben Jealous in Maryland. Before that particular panel, I had a chance to catch up with each one of them. And so here's Stacey Abrams, Democratic nominee for governor, talking about how her campaign is going. Take a look. Well, Stacey, how you doing?
I'm doing very well. 54 days to go.
Yes, and one of the things that I've been talking about with folks is that the difference, I think, what we're seeing now is that folks are going old school, whereas bumper stickers, yard signs, where everybody's talked about all about technology. It's really about precinct to precinct, a really hardcore ground game.
I think it's a combination, but I think you're absolutely right that the foundation of a successful campaign is the ground game. Technology is a tool to amplify it, but technology cannot replace hand-to-hand conversation, door-to-door knocking, making phone calls, and really touching people where they are.
Saw a recent poll. Looks good for you. So it's not bad to be in that position. Ending September, and then of course going into October, November.
Well, what we've seen in the polling is that it's undercounting the communities we know will turn out. We saw a 43% increase in African American turnout in the primary. We saw a 400% increase in Latinos, 600% in Asian Pacific Islanders. We know that the ground game we are running is reaching people who have not voted in primaries or in midterms in decades. And if we can turn those voters out, we will win.
I remember sitting in the White House it was an off-record meeting we had. It was with a number of radio hosts and then President Obama. And there was a sister from Georgia who was talking about when Nunn was running for Senate. And she said, look, she's trying to go after, white conservative women who are in the suburbs as opposed to hardcore voters and turning them out. Your deal has been, look, you turn out the people who you know are going to vote your way and just jack those numbers up.
Well, we're going with an all-of-the-above strategy, but that means that you have to go to all. And what we haven't seen happen in decades is actually reaching out and reaching deep into the communities that share our values. But we're talking every community. In our primary, we won every single region of the state. We won 153 of 159 counties. So we're not ignoring anyone, but we are also making sure that we respect the votes of those who share our values and simply haven't had anyone ask them to vote in way too long.
Also, we are seeing significant enthusiasm among black women all across the country, but I definitely have been getting that in Georgia.
Well, as the potential first African-American woman to be the CEO of a state in American history, we see that there's a lot of enthusiasm and energy because people know that I will be the first, but I will not be the last. And if I have an opportunity to open that door, I'm looking forward to going through it and propping it open for everyone else.
All right, we're looking forward to covering this race and having you back on Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Thank you so much for having me.
Appreciate it.
Take care.
All right, cool. Thanks a bunch.
It's going to be a tough battle in Maryland for Ben Jealous, who's running against incumbent Larry Hogan, the Republican. He holds a huge lead when it comes to money, and also he's head of the polls. Ben Jealous and I talked about that, and he says he's not worried because when he ran in the Democratic primary, he said he started off behind as well. It's my conversation with Ben Jealous.
All right, Ben Jealous, you are Democratic nominee, and you're in a blue state, but yes, you're running up against the governor, who's some say is governed as a moderate, if you will, understanding both parties. Just your thought assessment of the campaign as it stands right now, less than 60 days out.
We feel good. You travel across our state, what you hear is that people want change. They know that our schools have fallen in the national rankings every year that this governor has been in office. They know that healthcare costs have surged every year that he's been in office. And they know that we are now dead last in the region in job growth and income growth. If we had the growth of Virginia, we would have 50,000 more jobs right now and $8,000 more in our pocket. The crazy thing is that Virginia's job growth is lower than the national average, and we're well lower than that. So we brought a very clear campaign focused on let's fully fund our schools. Let's make sure that we get a better deal on health care and take on all of the big drug companies that keep overcharging us. And let's get unstuck by, frankly, doing what I do every day, which is building an inclusive 21st century economy that works better for all of us. So that's what we're focused on, and we feel good.
Prognosticators say you need money. You run against somebody who's very well funded. How are things on that front, and how do you close that gap?
We know that if we raise the funds that we need, we will win. We also know that we don't need to raise as much as him. Now, Hogan showed 4 years ago, when he was really the challenger, raised far less than the man who ran as the incumbent, that you just got to raise enough to get your message out. Things are coming together. Now, frankly, I'm just running the same game I did in the primary. In the primary, I started 15 points back. The polls at the start of early vote said I would lose by 7 points. I won by 10 points because we built a strong ground game and we got our message out. And that's what we have to do here, and we're well on our way.
We saw young African Americans not really enthusiastic in 2016 in that particular presidential campaign. How are you messaging them, speaking to them to ensure that they are going to the polls? Because when you look at it in any survey, older voters will vote at a much higher rate than younger voters. What are you saying to them?
We're squarely focused on ending the student debt crisis, paying for it by ending mass incarceration, on making our schools safer, our streets safer, but also stopping the killing of unarmed civilians by the cops. And so a very pragmatic focus on making young people's lives better, and they're responding well, quite frankly, to a candidate who has the courage to say we can actually do big things again, we can change things and change things for the better for you.
All right, Ben Jealous, always good to see you.
Always good to see you.
Good luck, and we'll certainly chat more before this campaign's over.
All right, appreciate you.
Thanks a bunch.
Florida. That's what all the folks are talking about. Andrew Gillum with his upset win in the Democratic primary there. Of course, he is facing Ron DeSantis in November. He also was a part of today's conversation, and I had a chance to talk with him, the third of our 3 black gubernatorial nominees. Here we go. Energy. That's all I've been hearing from folks out of Florida. Just your thoughts, your assessment. Here we are less than 60 days out.
Yeah, we're 56 days out from election and probably 30 days before 2 million ballots end up in mailboxes. But Roland, it has been amazing. The energy on the ground is incredible. People really do feel real change in the air in our state. We had a volunteer call the other night. We had 3,000 lines occupied, and many of those places, people had hundreds of people in a room and just occupied one line. I mean, it gives you a sense that people are really excited on the ground, but as you heard me say all throughout the primary, the only thing that matters is how we vote and if we get out and vote. And I honestly believe that the energy exists such that people are going to show up and show out in record numbers in Florida.
A number of Puerto Ricans are now in the state of Florida. You had Donald Trump this morning questioning nearly 3,000 dying. That surely should be offensive and ticking off those folks who saw loved ones, who saw their homes destroyed and lost as a result and run out of that territory.
Absolutely. First of all, just when you think the president couldn't get any lower, he goes lower. There is no floor for this guy, it seems. I take particular offense in the state of Florida, where we are the home to the highest number of Puerto Ricans outside of the island of Puerto Rico. I visited Puerto Rico a few weeks ago, sat with the governor, overnighted in the interior in a hacienda where they had not yet received their power back, right? This is a U.S. commonwealth, if you will. They are part of us. The federal response is a terrible embarrassment, and quite frankly, my heart goes out in advance to those in the path of Florence, because if this is how the president conducts himself, self-congratulating, undermining the efforts for recovery in Puerto Rico, imagine the nervousness that might exist for those people. I wish them well. I wish them no harm, and I hope that this is a much improvement upon the recovery efforts. But you got to wonder when you have a president who just doesn't deal in reality, and quite frankly has such reduced regard for human life, is willing to suggest a political conspiracy rather than admit that their administration failed, and as a result of that, thousands of people lost their lives.
Last question real quick. Clearly, when your opponent has resigned his seat, it seems like you got him a little bit worried in his campaign.
Well, my opponent also is modeling himself after Donald Trump. He's sitting around calling names, equating me with animals, while we're getting around the state and talking about the issues that matter to people. We're going to stay on the issues while they sink in the swamp. My grandmother always told me that never wrestle with pigs because you both get dirty, but the pig likes it. So they won't have a wrestling partner in me. They're going to have a governor, and that's how we'll win this state.
All right, Andrew Gillum, appreciate it. Thanks a bunch. Appreciate it.
Folks, when we come back on Roland Martin Unfiltered, we'll talk the new Nielsen report on African-American consumers and how we're going from folks who are consumers but also to creators. That's next right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered.
This is Diala Riddle, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered. Stay woke.
This is Director X, the director of Superfly on the red carpet, or the black carpet, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Yo, what up, y'all? This is Jay Ellis, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Hi, I'm Chaley Rose, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
I'm Lex Scott Davis, and you are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Hey, what's up, y'all? It's your boy Jacob Lattimore, and you're now watching Roland Martin right now.
All right, folks, we're broadcasting live here in Washington, D.C. from Cuba Libre, where, of course, we had our School Choice is the Black Choice reception. And we just, of course, heard from the three brothers and sisters who are running for governor. Now let's talk about African Americans as consumers. The reality is, when it comes to this economy, well, we're up to now a spending power of $1.3 trillion. That's a hell of a lot of money. But the question is, what are we spending that money on? Are brands respecting us? And what does it say about our loyalty? Well, every year for the last 7 years, Nielsen has done their annual survey on black consumers, and their new survey is out. So I'm doing the phone. I see, here's the deal. We're going to talk about this here because black folks, we really use our phones.
We really do.
So I need to use both. This is a copy of their report, folks. It is called From Consumers to Creators, Digital Lives of Black Consumers. And so joining us right now is Cheryl Grace with Nielsen. Now, I ain't going to give a title. Because Cheryl would have to need like 3 sides of a business card if I read her full title. Tell folks what your title is.
I'll just leave it at Senior Vice President of Consumer Engagement.
Thank you. That's
How
right.
About that?
If they can shorten that, I'll be happy.
Okay.
Cheryl, we are glad to have you back. We've talked about this. First time on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Glad to have you here.
Thank you.
And for folks who don't know, Nielsen does several of these reports. But black folks kicked this thing off. Black folks set the trend.
We did. We started the report in 2011, and since then we've done Asian American reports, Hispanic reports, as well as LGBT communities. So we have an entire series now, but it all originated with the African American consumer.
Now, a lot of people, when it comes to these reports, they may talk about just spending power. They may talk about just when it comes to our views on one aspect. But you cover a variety of areas in here in terms of how much time we spend on games, watching television, us creating content, all kinds of stuff.
We do, because we think it's important that African Americans not only understand what their buying power is, but how their purchasing decisions impact brands, and more importantly, how brands need to understand what that buying power can do for their market share. And so it's really important, because if you don't know what your power is, you literally just give it away. And so this isn't a report that just talks about how you're spending your money, but the importance of how you're spending your money. And there's a difference.
Summer Redstone, of course, who he owns Viacom, and he had this famous statement, content is king.
Yes.
And it's king for us, not only when it comes to what we watch, what we consume, but also what we create.
Yeah, because we're consuming so much media across all platforms. So whether it's the 52 hours a week of television that we're watching, or the fact that 3.6 million of us are tuning into podcasts, or the fact that there are so many of us who are gamers, that 73% of blacks who are over the age of 13 claim to be gamers, and that's a $36 billion industry compared to the $11 billion industry for just movie going. So when you think about all of those opportunities that we have as consumers to see ourselves, we have to be responsible for creating that content. And that's one of the things that we really wanted to stress in this year's report that's so different than what we've done before, is we're trying to show that you can't just consume without being able to make sure that you're seeing what you need to see and how we need to be reflected. And we're the only ones who can best tell those stories.
Well, I mean, it's funny we're having this conversation because what you're talking about is literally what we're doing right here.
Right.
Because,
yes.
One, and this is a digital-only show.
Yes.
Here we are, again, talking about the things that other folks are ignoring.
Yes.
You're not necessarily going to have this conversation on these cable news networks and broadcast networks. And if it is, it won't be just about black folks.
Right.
And so what black folks are saying is, look, we want stuff that's about us, that's for us.
For us, by us, about us. We're taking control of the message. And that's what this year's report, the theme is really all about, is the importance of owning that content and how successful that is to brands. So when brands actually see that they are generating not a little, but a lot of revenue from the instances where we do tell those stories and we tell them well, then you start to see more brands looking for opportunities to do that.
Now, look, there are always, so I ask this question all the time of folks who are book authors. So I ask you, what was the one wow moment for you after this report was done? Where did you go, wow?
Wow, for me, there were a couple. Number one is that our spending is growing faster than any other group of people spend. So between the year 2000 and 2017, we had a 108% growth rate compared to 87% growth rate for non-Hispanic whites.
Now, Deborah
That's
Owens,
a wow moment for
me. If Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, was here, she'd be mad because she'd be like, we should be saving and not spending, but the reality is.
And we should be. But that's not what the report is about,
right,
and
right.
we'll leave that to
It's
the financial
showing what we
institutions.
do.
But this is what the reality of the situation is. And so if you're looking at how this means that you as an African-American consumer actually have buying power, you need to look at that uptick number, and brands need to understand that. That was the first takeaway for me. The second takeaway for me was the fact that so many black people are gamers. Had no idea. 73% of all blacks who are over the age of 13 consider themselves gamers. That's 73% of all blacks. Gaming is a $36 billion industry. That's a lot of money that we're putting on the table. And if we're not concentrating on ensuring that our games are reflective of who we are, we're leaving money on the table as well.
One of the things that you mentioned earlier, and like right here, is higher device and technology ownership.
Ownership.
And again, when I talked to earlier this year, T.I. was in Atlanta, he talked about us owning our culture. Richelieu Dennis, the brother who bought Essence,
yes.
He says we need to own our culture. We must monetize our culture where we are making the money. Other folks have made billions
off of
our music,
yes.
off of our movies, off of our style.
Yes.
And so this is what black folks are saying, no. It's time for us to get paid off of us.
And the fact that this trend of what we're seeing as voracious consumers and content creators isn't going to go away, because when you take a look at how old we are as a people, we're much, much younger than the total population,
yep.
right? And so 54% of blacks are under the age of 35. That means 54% of us have grown up, because I'm just a little bit off from that number. 54% of us have grown up literally having some type of digital experience as part of our lives the entire time. So our expectations are much different
right.
than those who are older. And so we expect brands to understand how they need to reflect
right.
our culture. We expect brands to ensure that they support the causes that are important to us. And you see that those numbers are much higher with black people than they are with general market.
Somebody out there, they want to get to know more about this. Where can they actually read this report?
So the report, hot off the press today, Nielsen.com/African Americans. That's plural, African Americans. Nielsen is spelled Nielsen, because I don't want anybody calling and say, I can't get the report. Well, there's no O. Nielsen.com/African Americans.
All right. Well, Cheryl, always glad to see you. We appreciate the report. And again, our folks need to know what's in here, so you also need to know what you're communicating out there and leveraging our power.
And leverage that power. Use it for good.
All right. Cheryl, thanks so much.
Thanks.
All right, folks, when we come back, we're going to talk with Tim King about the idea of school choice and why he says not only when it comes to owning technology, why we should. That's next. Roland Martin.
Hey, folks, welcome back to Roland Martin Unfiltered. As I said, we're here at Cuba Libre here in Washington, D.C. And what is happening here, this is the School Choice is the Black Choice reception. We did this with the National Alliance of Public Charter Schools, as well as a number of other groups as well. My wife and I, we founded School Choice is the Black Choice. And let me be clear. So it's very interesting that I travel this country and black folks come up to me and they're like, man, here you go. Why do you back charter schools? Let me be clear so you understand. I support anything where our kids can succeed. Traditional schools, public charter schools, magnet schools, homeschool, online school, technical school. I don't care what kind of school it is. If it's working for our children, I'm down with it. And joining us right now is someone who is a pioneer in this area, Tim King, out of Chicago, urban prep, doing amazing things with the young men there as well. Tim, he was one of our honorees here. Good to see you.
Good seeing you too, Roland. Thanks for having me.
So I want to start this because it's very interesting to me when I talk about that, because there's this visceral reaction when you mention charter schools where people act as if it's this totally foreign, oh my God, unbelievable thing, when the reality is we've always had different types of schools.
Yeah.
We've had trade schools, magnet schools. Somebody's watching. I guarantee you they're tweeting right now. I'm going to pull it up. They're going to be on Facebook or Periscope or YouTube saying, well, they cherry pick, you got to apply to get in. I went to a magnet school in Houston, Texas. I had to apply for the school, which means I got in, somebody didn't.
Yeah. There's a lot of misinformation out there about schools, about charter schools and what we are, what we do. I think the one thing that people need to keep in mind, and you allude to this when you talk about magnet schools, is that charter schools are public schools. They are public schools. So when you are sending your child to a charter school, you're sending your child to a public school. When you are supporting a charter school, you are supporting public education in this country. And I'm going to take it a step further. Black folks throughout history have been starting their own schools because they either did not have access to or were dissatisfied with the existing infrastructure at public schools or the schools that were available to them. So this notion of black folks starting charter schools, the notion of us starting schools is not new. It's just the format is new, and that's scaring a few people. And folks need to understand that they should be supporting success.
Well, I remember I had Randy Weingart on the show, and she talked about how, charter schools were born out of racist segregation. And I said, Randy, hell, everything in America was born out of white supremacy, so that can't be the argument. And what's interesting to me about this, when we have this conversation, I can go into a room, and this has happened multiple times, and 90% of the room, I did one, literally there's 1,000 people in the room, and about 80 to 90% were totally against charter schools. When I broke it down, but here's what got them, in which you understand, I want you to explain. When I say, y'all want more black history? They go, yeah. I said, you control the curriculum.
Right.
You want arts and band, choir and dance? They're like, yeah. I'm like, you control the curriculum.
Exactly.
Then they go, I said, you want more recess and physical activity? Yes. You control the curriculum. Then I go, you want black folks getting contracts? They're like, yeah. I said, you control the budget.
Right.
Then I say, you want more black male teachers? Yeah. You control who gets hired. They say, well, all the time, wait a minute. You mean tell me, with charter school, we control the curriculum, we control the hiring, and we control the contracts?
Right.
I said, yes. The room flips every time.
Yeah.
Because that's the idea of us owning our community.
Right. Yeah. Urban Prep is the country's first all-boys charter public high school for boys. What we did was we said there's a problem. Black males not going to college, not graduating to college, dropping out of high schools at alarming rates in the city of Chicago and across this country. And so we said, we're going to do something about it. And a group of us got together and we decided to start a school that was going to be laser focused on this particular population. People are flabbergasted when I tell them that all of our students are African American, all of our students are male. We have 90% of the students there are low income, 27% of the students special education, and all of them are getting into four-year colleges and universities. I mean, people just are amazed at that, but you can do that when you own the curriculum, when you own the hiring, when you own the contracts, when you own what is happening inside the classrooms and what's happening inside the entire organization and the administration. It's a very important point.
So somebody will say, well, how can you be successful when other folks can't? What would you say to the idea of this is our secret?
Yeah, folks ask me that all the time, and there's no one thing. What we do value very highly is a positive school culture. Our young men, each and every day, when they come in there, they got on a blazer and tie, and we tell them that they can achieve. We have this opening ceremony every year called Convocation. Freshmen, and we give them their new Urban Prep blazer pressed on their chest. And then the freshmen, now this is a guy week. For the last 9 years, I've gone to schools where the teachers have told me I can't learn anything. I've been at Urban Pro for a week, and they've taught me that I can learn everything. And that's just after a week. Like, this kid got it after a week. And really, sure, we got a unique curriculum, sure, we got a unique program, but it really boils down to the adults actually believing that it's possible for these kids to be able to succeed. That we're not going to be around there telling them they can't do something. It's all about what they can do and empowering them.
And the other thing is this here, and this is the position that I take. If there's a traditional school that's handling their business and doing exactly what you're talking about, I'm down with you.
Yeah.
And I say study it and replicate it. But if it's not, our kids should not be sentenced to those schools. And I have no problem if we end up with 15 urban preps, 30 urban preps, 100 urban preps, because if you're doing the job and our kids getting educated, that's the way it should be.
And you're empowering families to make decisions and choices. Look, my parents had the opportunity to choose what school I was going to go to. And they got to choose what school my older brother was going to go to. For him, they wanted him to go to an all-boys school. For me, they wanted me to go to a co-ed school. They had the resources to be able to make that decision based on what they thought was in our best interest. And we need to recognize that families of black families, economically disadvantaged black folks, need to be able to make the same kind of choices. They need to be able to choose the school that's right for their kids, regardless of what type of school it is.
And again, I hear from people, well, every kid can't go. Every kid can't go to a magnet school. But you don't see people saying shut magnet schools down.
Yeah.
And the thing here is, our job is to say, no matter what form it is, our kids are going to get educated. So that's why I tell people, you can argue, you can yell and scream all you want to. When the NAACP said there should be a moratorium on charter schools, there are a lot of people in the education reform movement who are freaking out. Oh my God, Roland, what do you think? I said, y'all think I'm worried?
Yeah.
I said they can do whatever they want to. I said, that ain't going to stop it from happening.
Right.
But the key for me is, I want to see more folks like you. I want to see more black CMOs. I want to see more African Americans. And I've made it clear to folks in this movement, look, you need to have black people who are making decisions for their children.
Yeah, I agree. And, it is unique to be African American and starting and leading and operating a charter school in this country. I think if there were more of us, then we might be able to, to do a little bit more. But, I think it is important that people, NAACP, whoever it might be, recognize the value that is being added by charter schools, particularly certain charter schools, and support them. Because, the families are going to come, but how long can we continue to operate and flourish and do well if we don't have the institutional investors, the support from government, the support from philanthropy to be able to do the things that we're doing?
Well, and another thing is this here. For the parents, they don't give a damn. They're like, look, you can call this thing traditional,
right, whatever
public
it is.
charter, you can call it magnet. All I want to make sure my kid get educated.
Look, we've got parents who ask us, what's tuition? And we try to explain to them, no, we're a charter school, we're a public school. Because you're right. They are so interested in having their child succeed, they're not even thinking about what classification this school has. private, public, parochial, charter, whatever. They just want the success and the achievement for their children. That's what's most important to them.
Last thing here, there is there's a young man or a young woman out there who they might be watching. Their parents might be watching. Their grandparents might be watching, aunts and uncles. And they're saying, you know what, this thing ain't for me. I'm not getting it, so I really want to blow this school thing off. What do you tell them?
Oh, I tell them you got to be focused. If you want to ensure the future, your future, as a parent, as a grandparent, you got to make sure you're taking care of the kids. And so you've got to be intentional around what is the right type of environment and school for your child to attend. And then you've got to advocate on behalf of your child to get him or her into that school. And then once they're there, you can't just drop them off and say, look, you know, school is your job, school. I'm done with it. You got to be present and attentive, because every single school is not going to be able to pay the attention to every single student the way a parent can. And so parents have to be really focused on that. It is the number one thing, I think, that a parent can do for a child, is making sure that that child has a high-quality education.
All right, Tim King, I appreciate it. My alpha brother, thanks so much, man. Good luck.
All
Absolutely.
right, thank you.
All right, folks, we'll take a break right now. When we come back, we'll chat with Living Singles Erica Alexander about how she's using blockchain and journalism to change the future of media. That's next on Roland Martin Unfiltered.
He's got it. Whatever the biz, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, y'all. It's Roland Martin, Rolling with Roland now. He's funky, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
All right, folks, welcome back. Really? Jay is so loud. Welcome back to Roland Martin Unfiltered, folks. We're here at Cooper LeBray here in Washington, D.C., and we've been having a great time here. Folks are here, of course, for our school choice is the Black Choice reception. There's lots of food going around. I ain't had none yet, so I need somebody to make me a plate. That'll be great. Folks, joining us right now, you know her, Maxine from Living Single. She's been very much involved in politics, public policy, and now she is doing something very interesting when it comes to blockchain and media. And so I saw this story. I was like, girl, what you doing? Come on the show and talk about it. Eric Alexander, what's happening?
Thank you, Roland Martin. You always in it, so I'm trying to get in it too.
So explain. So tell folks, what are you doing with blockchain and media? What are you doing?
All right, so Civil is a new platform that's trying to empower the people to have more control over journalism and inclusivity and who gets to do it. This has been your lifelong thing. This is what you've done. One of the things I loved about your Breakfast Club interview was that you talked about how many people you put on and how many people have gone on from those careers. But if you think about it, you're not able to really talk about how many people can't go and know Roland Martin.
Right.
So how many people are we leaving behind? And not just people, the stories that they would do, the Pulitzer Prizes, all the things that journalism brings to light, which I think is important. So Civil's trying to make that much more of an economy, a new economy for building journalism, and not only that, new media forms.
So how does it work? Let's explain how it works.
Well, I'm doing something called The Blackness, which is our own newsroom. And it's a multimedia, long-form investigative reporting newsroom.
Okay.
We're talking about stories that usually marginalized communities are not able to do. They might pop up and then they just disappear into the nothingness. And we call that the blackness. And so Civil would be our way for us to put our newsroom on and actually try to leverage, we want a whole distributed network of journalists, maybe with like the National Black Association of Journalists, HBCUs, and try to there's a natural pipeline that really try to get people and fund those stories so they can have long form.
So why did you want to do this? What was there one particular thing where you went, you know what? I think I'm going to do this.
Well, you know what? People come to me up all the time because they see my face, they think Cousin Pam, they see, Max, but they tell me these stories that are horrific. Their sister got burned alive in the middle of the street, and no one's looking for that person. There's a man that's hanged, or a young football player. He's in clothes that's not his own and shoes that are 2 sizes too small, but no one's ever found his killer. What happens to those stories? They just disappear. If you're not able now to be, unfortunately, killed on camera, where are those other stories about those people we don't see? You know, the sexual, what is sex trafficking, all those things. So I'm planning to hope that this platform, this new platform, Civil, and its newsrooms are able to really spend a lot more time on them and give them their just due.
So how's this thing funded? So how does that work?
Well, Civil, they do it by tokens. Now, everybody talks about Bitcoin, but, it's a token economy. So they might, if you're a newsroom on there, they might give you a token grant to get started. And they have 33 million tokens to give to people, and then they keep the rest. But what happens is if you have a token, that means you have a say. And that gives the newsroom more freedom. And that's good because that means that they have a governance model they're trying to put up on there, like, how they think a newsroom should behave. If they think that it's, and I should say think, the token holders, they can vote on it. They can say, hey, I don't know, they're doing false stories. They're doing stories that, that are not, I don't know, viable or whatever. You can vote. But people also have a way that they can buy into it. So there's going to be a big token sale for Civil tokens.
Okay.
So they've actually got a real economy and a real business model underneath it.
So where can folks go to find more information about
They
Civil?
should go on, hey, they can look up Fast Company. They just did the article on my company, Color Farm, merging or doing the blackness with them. But they should go to Civil. And that's join_Civil. And you can read all about it. And they should also get more familiar with Bitcoin. You're a real digital pioneer, but not many people are in that space. There's, I think, flat space, which is what is now, and then there's the digital space, which is round. So it's like when rock and roll came in, people didn't understand it. You're going to have to go understand it to build in it. And it's one of the places where I think black people can be much more powerful.
So beyond that, you're still acting? Are you
I'm
still
acting.
You still
I'm
doing
on
that?
Black Lightning.
What you doing?
I'm on Black Lightning.
So am I.
You are?
I was in was I in the first episode of Black Lightning?
You don't even know what episode he was on.
No, I did it. And Salim called me and said, yo, he said, be prepared to have you back for season 2. I'm like, I'm ready.
Oh.
I was in the first or the second one.
I'm going to ask him to put me in that scene, please.
Oh, I was like, because I'm going to bring the funk.
Go on, bring it. I'm playing a telepathic therapist.
Oh, Lord.
I'm helping people with their powers.
And then, I'm glad you mentioned that. And don't forget, of course, Mario Van Peebles' movie Armed, where I play a smooth-dressing barber. Of course, in theaters and on digital on Friday, September 14th.
No, yeah,
so
I'm doing
Black
that.
Lightning, what else?
Black Lightning and Color Farm. We've doing a movie about the Boys Choir of Harlem with Ava DuVernay's producing partners, Tammy and Paul Garnes and Jamie Petrikoff. I just set up a horror movie that I wrote with Lionsgate. That's going on. I just did a 4-part series with Joss Whedon, who does The Avengers. It was a spinoff of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I wrote it with him, and it's already out with Dark Horse. It's called, it's a black girl vampires over 200 years old. I've just been hustling. I mean, I'm not hustling as hard as you. Nobody can do that. Nobody can beat that. But I'm out here on these mean streets.
Everybody keeps talking about reboots.
Uh-oh.
Do you really want to see a reboot of Living Single?
Let me tell you something. I'm the person who probably said no. That when everybody probably said yes. And the reason I think is because it's hard to get forward momentum in your career. And I believe it's important for me, at least in my age at this time, to move forward. It would be nice to do it. I mean, I'd have fun. But it's not maybe where my heart is. It would be nice. I keep thinking that they should take the same cast and make something new with it. Do a remix. Don't just do a reboot.
Right.
Mash it up or something. So we'll see, but I don't think so.
Yeah,
not for me.
A remix, Single Living.
After single, divorced and got hip replacement. That's what it needs to be. Shoot.
All the pharmaceuticals will sponsor that show.
Hey, You're thinking. That's why I love you, Roland. You know how to pull that sponsorship.
Come on now. Somebody got to do it. Somebody got to do it.
Yes.
Well, Erica, always good to see you.
It's always good to be asked. Thank you so much. And thank you for setting not only an example, but raising the bar for everybody.
I appreciate it. Thanks a bunch. We'll have you back.
All right.
All right, then. Folks, going to go to a break. When we come back, I'm going to show you a really, really dumb white man who's a white supremacist who actually, just wait till y'all see the clip. Oh, my God. You're just going to crack up laughing. So I have the debut of our Stuck on Stupid Person of the Week up next on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Okay. All right. We'll do it. All right, folks. Yeah, me and Erica were trying to talk a little business there, okay? All right, then, y'all. So the Jay-Z, Trayvon, Paramount, BET documentary, of course. The last airing, I think, was this week. So they had this interview with this white supremacist in the documentary. And when I saw what happened, I said, here we have our first Stuck on Stupid Person of the Week. Roll this, please. All right, y'all, we're trying to get this straight. So we couldn't hear the sound bite? All right, so y'all going to fix that? All right, so we're working on that. We're going to have that in just a second, folks. But first, it was utterly hilarious for them asking this guy a question who tried to make the argument that slavery was not the reason for the Civil War. And then he said there were other reasons. Then when they asked him for other reasons, he goes, duh. I'm not a historian. No, because you're an idiot. Y'all got it? We working on it? Now, Jay telling me we're going to have it tomorrow. Jay been telling me all day we're going to have this clip, and now we can't play the damn clip. Boy, I tell you. But anyway, well, here's the deal. So we chose this guy. The clip is hilarious. It's been all around social media. And see, this right here is the problem with why we have his story in history. You've got white people in this country who are in denial about American history. You've got all these revisionist folks who want to somehow say that slavery, that the Civil War was not about slavery. It was about tyranny. It was about states' rights. Here's the problem with that. If you actually go back and look at the documents as to why South Carolina seceded, it was clear and undeniable slavery. If you go back and look at the documents, when Mississippi seceded from the Union, it was clearly about slavery. You have these individuals who don't want to own up to the fact that slavery, the oppression of black people, free labor, was the reason for the Civil War. Instead, they want to come up with all these other phony reasons. And these are the people who today, who still support the flying of the Confederate flag, who still support all of these different monuments, because they are living in denial. Folks, we're living in a nation where, again, white folks have set the standard when it comes to education, when it comes to finance, when it comes to the economy, when it comes to everything, every single thing. But now that we're becoming a changing nation, now all of a sudden the voice of black people, the voice of Latinos, the voice of Asians, the voice of Native Americans is now becoming even more prominent. And so we are now challenging conventional wisdom. We are now challenging white supremacy. We're now pushing people on this particular area to get people to understand that what cannot happen in this country is we continue to have a generation of people who are walking around clueless, who are walking around stupid, who are walking around dumb, and then who are spreading these things on social media, who are saying these things on television, who are teaching these things in school.
No. What is required now in America is for there to be a reboot, if you will, of white America. What it requires is for white America to somehow go back to school to learn the things that they never taught, to learn the true history of this nation, the true reason why things have happened in this country, the real understanding of some 245 years of sanctioned slavery before the Civil War, and then Reconstruction, and then 92 years of Jim Crow, and why that happened, and to get them to understand why African Americans have not been able do exactly what they're doing when it comes to being able to have finances, to be able to have wealth, when it comes to redlining, all of these things. There are too many folks in this country who are white who really have absolutely no clue about the origins of America and how we got to be where we are. And I can tell you right now, there are folks like me who are not going to let them off the hook, who are going to continue to educate them. And then when they want to be in denial, then we're going to challenge them as well. And we're also going to then challenge media folks to do the exact same thing. Why? Because they need to understand it's also their job. Next week, I'm going to deal with our national newspapers and digital sites where a survey was done on diversity, and there were less than 300 of the 1,400 outlets would even turn in their numbers. And do you know why? Because they don't have enough folks who look like me. We at Roland Martin Unfiltered are going to be the medium that challenges these folks when it comes to what's happening in this country. And whether they like it or not, we're going to use our voice, and we're going to bring the funk doing so. I want to thank everybody for watching the show. Don't forget, we're going to live stream the show, restream it again at 10 p.m., 2 a.m., 6 a.m., and 10 a.m. We also need your support. Please go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com to join our Bring the Funk fan club, to be one of our contributors, because we want to be able to keep bringing this information to you, keep sharing it with you, and keep talking about the stories and the issues you're not going to see covered anywhere else. Tomorrow, folks, I will be live streaming my speech from Los Angeles, speaking to a labor union there. We'll also have more coverage from Congressional Black Caucus. We've got a fantastic show lined up for you tomorrow. Don't forget to tell everybody about Roland Martin Unfiltered. You have an absolutely great day. I got to go catch a plane. Holla!